Continue to follow the breaking news, the release of the Epstein files to the House Oversight Committee and the release of the transcript and audio of this interview between Deputy AG Todd Blanche, former personal attorney of President Trump, and Ghislaine Maxwell, former Epstein associate. Notably, Maxwell in this transcript attempts to distance herself from Epstein, saying, quote, "I am not here to defend him." She insisted, however, that she did not participate in that activity with underage girls, something that has been refuted by victims of Epstein. Back with us now, Dave Ehrenberg, former state attorney in Palm Beach County, also attorney and co-host of the podcast George Conway Explains It All. George Conway, what do you make of these details that we're getting now? Maxwell distancing herself from Epstein, also saying that she never witnessed anything untoward in Trump's friendship with Epstein.
Well, distancing herself from Epstein is a lie because she was an enabler. She was a participant. You had multiple individuals say she was part of the abuse. So it's a lie. You can't believe anything this woman says. But from what we see from this transcript, Trump is getting what he wants. She is saying that Trump didn't do anything untoward, nothing criminal. That's what Trump wants. Ideally, he'd also like names of Democrats who did do something wrong, because that's what the MAGA base has been promised.
Yeah, the big tell for me from what Caitlin read earlier was the vagueness of some of the answers, because the vagueness of some of the answers suggests that the questions were vague. Did you ever see Donald Trump do anything inappropriate? It's like, who is going to take Ghislaine Maxwell's judgment on what is appropriate and what is not appropriate? I certainly won't. And the way, it strikes me that, his personal lawyer was, Donald Trump's personal lawyer is the Deputy Attorney General, who was the personal criminal defense lawyer, defended him in the criminal case he got convicted on in New York. And, I don't think this guy asked very specific questions. I mean, if you give this transcript to Dave and me, I don't know what you think. I mean, if you gave this transcript to Dave and me, and if it's like the way it sounds, I got to tell you, you gave us 20 minutes with that transcript, we'd come up with 100 questions that should have been asked, more specific.
This is, to be clear, and in this interview, is still referring to sexual assaults as massages. So her standard and vocabulary is a little different than perhaps what would be standard. I think it's interesting because Trump has actually publicly recently talked about how Epstein poached from him young women who worked at the spa at his Mar-a-Lago club. And the accounts from at least one victim was that it was Ghislaine Maxwell herself who did the poaching. It was testified, as you've noted, at trial, and yet she's asked about it by Todd Blanche, and this goes again to her credibility, which, I know she's been indicted previously for perjury, so there's problems with it, but she's not even confirming what seems like obvious. So that sort of speaks to something very important here.
You have to lock her down, and you have to ask specific questions, and you have to ask follow-up questions. But instead of putting the line prosecutor in that room with her, who knows everything, like Maureen Comey, right? James Comey's daughter, who was fired, they brought the number 2 person, who was Trump's personal lawyer, to ask these vague questions. He doesn't know all the details of this case, but that's why he was sent down there, because he was sent down there for a reason, and mission accomplished.
Yeah, I mean, good lawyers know how to ask questions to get answers, but lawyers also know how to ask questions not to get answers.
That's interesting.
And, if you want, this is journalists. I mean, part of the way, if you don't ask the right question, you don't get the right answer. And that's just the way this works.
We are still going through the transcript, and we were just handed some information that in the transcript of this conversation, Maxwell actually criticizes testimony from an underage victim who claimed that she was, in graphic testimony, that Maxwell was actually part of the sexual abuse when she was 14, 15, and 16 years old. Maxwell apparently says to Todd Blanche, "I don't think that testimony is correct," claiming that Epstein had never met the girl before she was 16, and that she had never met Jane, which is a name being used to protect the victim's identity, as 20 or 21. Blanche responds, "I don't want to get into he said, she said." What do you make of that?
That's absurd. In a situation where you're giving somebody queen for a day immunity, and they're supposed to be telling you the truth, else, or else they could be subjected to false statements charges or perjury. The notion that you're not trying to test her credibility and that you're not trying to assess her credibility is absurd, and it's only, the only reason why anybody would not push on that if there's contradiction between the witness, Ghislaine Maxwell, and trial testimony of the victims, is you don't want to undermine this woman's credibility because you want her to say something favorable to your former client who's the President of the United States.
So, Dave, big picture, what is the effect of releasing this transcript of the interview done by the Deputy AG, formerly President Trump's personal attorney who represented him in the hush money trial? What's the effect of this?
It's not going to have a real effect. See, all these piecemeal attempts, releasing this transcript, trying to get the grand jury transcripts, trying to get the stuff from Comer's committee, that's a sideshow. What the MAGA base wants and what they're clamoring for is the Epstein file. And that has not been released in total. Until that happens, there's going to be a lot of unsatisfied right-wing conspiracy theorists who think they're continuing to be lied to.
It's like what we were saying at the top of the hour. This is going to be, I think, like the release of the Zelensky memo of the conversation that Trump had with Zelensky, where it just raises many, many more questions.
And interesting note there, Boris.
Yeah, I was just pointing out to Brianna that as part of this testimony, Maxwell says of Jeffrey Epstein's death that she does not believe that he died by suicide.
Wow.
I mean,
she obviously hasn't worked in government. You know, she doesn't know that cameras fail because it's old equipment. People fall asleep who are supposed to be on the job who are overworked and underpaid. And also the people closest to it all, Julie K. Brown, the reporter, and others, Alan Dershowitz, all said it's a suicide. So she's a conspiracy theorist herself then.
And she's going to light the fire for more conspiracy theories on the right.